Well, good to see you back. Nice crowd for day after an exam. Usually people give themselves a vacation or something, but I'm glad you're here, all of you. And so I graded your exams. It was like the fastest I ever got the exams graded for one of these classes. I got done last night. I haven't put them on the Moodle. I'll get your scores on the Moodle tonight maybe, and yeah, why not? And unless something's coming up that I forgot I'm supposed to take care of tonight, I don't know. And then if not, then definitely tomorrow morning, working at home, working on the farm. And Friday I'll do something I haven't done with this class before, actually return your exam. See, with the old gigantic lecture halls and the scantrons and all that, I just kept all the exams and said, if you want to know what you got wrong, come by my office. Because it would have taken like a half hour to return everybody's exams when you have like 200 people in the room. It's just a waste of time. And a lot of them didn't care. So I'll give you the actual things. Return those. Hi, Danielle. Did you want to talk about Kyo today? This is as good a day as any. It's a good day to do that. Yeah, whenever you're ready, I'll just kind of. Oh, do you want to come up here and let me mic you up so that the people that aren't here, or I'll hold the mic in my hand if you don't want to hold it. It's just a little fancy new Bluetooth mic.
Oh wow, fancy.
Yeah, and I figured out how they work now. Do you want me to hold it or you want it?
I can I just is this good? Like good?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
you're doing great.
Okay. Hi everybody. My name is Danielle Vasquez. I'm president of the KIO Native American Student Association. And have you mentioned extra credit or at all to him?
No, I was about to, so you
Oh,
get it started.
so
I'll
Dr. Price,
add to
because
whatever you say.
Dr. Price is so wonderful. He's offering extra credit if you guys volunteer at the powwow this year. The dates for the powwow are April 20th and the 21st. And what we ask of our volunteers is basically security positions. So different positions throughout the Adams Center. We ask like a minimum 4 hours, and if you volunteer, you do get a free weekend pass to the powwow. Um, I have a link, and I'll email that. I'll email
Okay,
like
yeah,
the link and
I'll
everything
put the
because
link on Moodle.
yeah, there's a sign up sheet for it. Yeah, so this year KIO is actually 50. This is our 50th celebration this year, so it's gonna be a big one. It's exciting. I'm excited. And if you guys don't want to volunteer, I mean, you guys should definitely come to the powwow. I think it's gonna be great. There's also a conference that'll be running in tandem with the powwow. So, but it's actually going to be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. If you guys are interested in kind of like Indian education, stuff like that, just different speakers coming. If you guys are interested, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Tanya Johal. She's this really great native comedian. So she's going to be having a show, and I'll send you information on that too.
Yeah, I'm
As
not
well,
the only one.
there's
A lot of them up there.
yeah, there's also going to be a basketball tournament and a stick game tournament. So if you guys are just like super like, if you want to just hang out at the basketball tournament, that we need volunteers for that too. And if anybody's interested in doing stick game, just like let maybe you know, and then I could set up a meeting with our secretary. She actually will teach you guys how to play stick game because we need judges, and she'll explain what judges do. Because I don't want to like talk about it because I really don't know that much about it. And I'll send my information along too if you guys like need it or anything. But I guess that's my spiel. That's kind of like
Yeah,
what I
and
can
we'll
remember.
get it all, you'll send me
Yeah.
the docs and posters and stuff, and I'll put it all on the Moodle. And So here's, let me say a word. And I'll put this on the Moodle page too. Uh, so for extra credit in my class, there's usually just a maximum of 6 points. Sometimes I've gone a little over that. But so you get, for example, at the powwow, working the powwow, and security isn't like walking around with a gun looking for trouble or anything.
No.
But it's like, we want to tell me if I'm wrong about this. It's like one of the common things is little kids who can't find their mommy, and
Yeah.
you go to the speaker with the microphone and tell them, we got a lost kid here looking for his mom. Things like that. Or
Yeah.
people are lost and they need directions and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not like the mall cop guy, no, I'm a big shot. Okay, so what I give is a point for each hour that you work there, and then they have a writing component too for extra credit, and they'll put all the details. Just some extra writing you could do on any topic. Yes.
Okay, so like if Friday and Saturday and so like 4 hours block, what if there's like stuff going on and so you like split up like two and two? Cause like that looks like big little league. So sorry. But, like
4 hours on both days? No, it's like one 4 hour block is all we ask. If you want to say more, we appreciate that. Yeah, it's just like the things on the sign up are like in 4 hour increments, just to better like for us. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean if you can come for 2 hours, like I'm pretty sure you can work that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So 6 hours total. If you did that much, you'd get 6 points. Anything over that, you're just there having a good time, and I'm not giving you extra credit for that. So okay, and we'll have it all on the Moodle for you. That's in April, so there's plenty of time to get ready for that.
Yeah, and if you guys want to be part of the club, we meet Mondays at 5. And that's just kind of event planning, basically, just helping us plan and fundraise for this big event. Having the alumni event this weekend. You guys want to come? I don't know. But yeah, so anybody have any questions?
Okay, thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, and you'll have fun working with Danielle and the crew over there. Okay, so always something going on. I try to announce everything, but sometimes I forget. But if you know of campus-wide events anytime or guest speakers that people here might be interested in, let me know, or just put it on the Moodle announcement page yourself. Everybody has access to that. I'll go in there and edit it now and then. I don't want to see any keggers advertised there or anything like that. I got to go in there and check it out, make sure people aren't abusing that. But you can, let me know if you got a guest speaker or something like that. Okay, so guess I can clip this back on my pocket now. Back to wherever I left off. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, you'll get your exams returned to you. I don't know what else was I saying. And I was going to say, hey, not only was everybody kind of faster taking the exam without the Scantrons, I was kind of thinking about it, Scantrons can kind of make you a little confused and have to slow down and make sure you're hitting the right bubble and all that. And I think without them, people seem to go faster. But not only were you faster, scores were a little higher. Whoa. I don't want to get our reputation for being too easy, although that's already out there. It's been out, and mistakenly so. I am just kind of average in my grading. The average grade's like always been for almost 20 years, it'll be 20 years in June, right there at the BB minus level, It's always been that way, but somehow the rumor got out I was giving everybody A's. Just some people who didn't like me, they kind of started that, and It just never died. I don't know what you guys have heard. So not everybody got an A, but I'd say the average though was up there in the mid to high B range this time. Yeah, so there's a lot of A graders out here in this class. And you know, I like it. I like seeing people succeed. I like communicating well with people and helping them out. There's just some stuffy aristocrats around here and people who think that if you get too many people succeeding, you must be doing something wrong. You know, you must be too easy. So there's a little bit of the inside story of academia for you. It gets worse than that. I could tell you all kinds of stuff, but I'll just leave it right at that for now. Yeah, these little stuffy elitists. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about them. Let's just calm right down and get back to the point. So welcome back, and we're picking up where we left off and getting ready for exam 2, I guess, in a month or whatever. And the regional overview, I tend to spend a little more time in the Northeast. I got to admit that, but I'm trying to balance it out more. And well, we can't talk about everybody, every tribe, but I will kind of start out with quite a bit of information on our own people, my own people. And like I said, Nanapashmat, I considered an elder, even though he's a few years younger than me, because of his knowledge and his heart, you know, to want to teach anybody our true traditions and not the fake ones that everybody lied about, and all the lies out there about our people, like wampum is the Indian money. That's like one of the big ones that had to be rebuked and corrected. And so just before I go to the next guy, just wanted to point out a couple of physical things. So he was a cultural revivalist. There's a lot of that going on in the 1970s. And I also mentioned he's part of the East Coast branch of the American Indian Movement, AIM. And teaching was a big part of it, and doing traditional things in the old way. People were trying to bring a lot of that back that had been lost, going way back to the time of the Pilgrims, you know, where that's 1620 when we first came into contact with those folks. And so he brought back old style. Excuse me. Shouldn't eat lunch so close to lecture time. I should have eaten a little earlier, but now I'm back. I'm doing all right. Old style wampum. So besides, and I didn't wear my wampum today. I'm always wearing it for this lecture. I'll wear it on Friday just for the heck of it. Okay. And the blue and the white parts of the shells you can make into these little cylinder beads too. These are thick clam shells, and string them up that way. That's the real old traditional way. I'll show you another use of the cylinder type of shell beads, wampum. The Iroquois also used them. And traditional hairstyle in our tribe, actually there's more than one, and including for the women and the men, but more than one men's hairstyle. But one of the traditional ones is shave your head and just have one long lock that starts in the middle. Kind of like what people call a mohawk, but different. You know, it starts in the middle and it goes all the way back, and you can see he had a long braid in the back. I used to have kind of a shorter than his braid. I'm going to grow my hair long again. It's all part of retirement. It's like, be you, man. You don't have to try to please the man anymore. I'm just so liberated now. Anyway, so I mean, I could have before, but something happened. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. But yeah, the traditional headdress and feathers. Now, the turkey tail feathers are used traditionally in the east of a lot of Algonquian language tribes, similar to the golden eagle tail feathers that are used out here in the west. And so he brought a lot back when, and this is almost embarrassing to admit, but some of our elders around the end of the 19th century, late 1800s through mid 1900s, even up to the 1970s, were wearing traditional outfits of the plains and copying Plains Indians because, and this is sad to admit, but I think because the white folks thought of the people of the plains as the real Indians, and a lot of our people were conscientious about not being looked at as real native people, partly, and this is another part of our history in America, partly because our people were more mixed with Africans, whereas the people out here in the West that are mixed are more mixed with French primarily, and then Scottish and Irish secondarily. Going back to the old Hudson Bay trading post days, you know. A lot of history we'll be looking at as we move across the country. But so it became normalized in the American mind to see natives that looked more like full blood, or as they call it, natives, or mixed with white folks, or more white looking, than to see natives that are mixed with black. And because during the Jim Crow era, when what I was just talking about was going on, African Americans were pretty widely demeaned and looked down upon, and part of the popular media was anti-black jokes. I mean, that was like everywhere, and defaming. And so Native people then in the East especially, not so much out here in the West, maybe a little more in the Southwest, who were part African, kind of succumbed to the internalized racism of wanting to downplay or deny their African ancestry. And yeah, and that happened in many of our families and people we know and all that. And so it's always been an issue. I'll come back to the issue when we talk about a topic called blood quantum, when we're into contemporary issues. But can't remember how I started talking about that just now. Anyway, you'll see in the pictures I'm about to show you. Okay. So my other mentor, elder guy, one of my favorite people in the world, Talok Whedon is his last name. Yeah, I have it up there. Okay. So yeah, that's him about the year before we met. But we were corresponding then. He taught me probably more than anybody else. I didn't know Nana Pashamit that long. Nana Pashamit actually died the year after I met him. And but Talok, he's still alive today. I think he's 75 now. He's a little older than me. And he's probably done more to teach more Native people in New England their traditions and history than anybody. And then he did an amazing thing and reconnected some of our people who had been shipped down into the Caribbean, down to Bermuda, way back in the 1600s during the colonial wars between our people and the English, when we had the Narragansetts also as allies, and the Pequots. So a lot of Pequots, Narragansetts, and Wampanoags, and some of the Nipmucs and Massachusetts people too, were captured during those colonial wars and sent down to the Caribbean into slavery. And Tulloch was able to reconnect with some of their descendants, and now they have an annual reunion ever since then. And it's a lot of history, that never gets told, and I don't even have time in an introductory class to teach it all. But I got a book coming out it's not, it's going to maybe go to press this summer, but it takes these academic books about a year after you turn them in to come out in the bookstore. But anyway, I'll deal more with it there. And so I like to just salute my mentors when I start this lecture. And that's all I'll say for now. And then, so where we're going here and what we're looking at in the Northeast is just basically 7 tribes altogether with a few mentions of others, and I'll list them for you here. So our people, our name, Wampanoag, translates out to people of the first light, meaning also people of the sunrise. So over there on the east coast, Atlantic Ocean, you see the sun come up over that ocean. And so several of the tribes who live close to the coast or on the coast have a name related to the rising sun. And that's our case. Also the Abnaki people, similar name. And the Haudenosaunee people, Haudenosaunee of New York, their name translates out in the Iroquoian language, which is a different language than ours, as people of the Longhouse. The Longhouse, central to the village, to the community, a meeting place, a connecting place is another way of defining that. And the French named them the Iroquois, and then that got anglicized to Iroquois. Iroquois. I do not even know what that means. I probably knew at one time. I can't remember. Okay, but it's not really their name. It's just kind of one of those misnomers that stuck. And it's a confederacy of 6 tribal nations, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk. And then later the Tuscarora people either joined them or rejoined them. There's different stories. The Tuscarora somehow ended up down in North Carolina, but they speak an Iroquoian language. And during that mid-colonial era, decided to migrate back to New York, like they were from there, and they ended up being incorporated into the 5-nation alliance as the 6th nation of the Haudenosaunee. Okay, other northeastern tribes that I'll mention, just so you can see their names in print once and kind of get an idea of who I'm talking about. The Pequots in Connecticut, a little ways to the west of us, well known as formerly, not currently, but formerly the tribe with the biggest casino, and one of the first tribe to really get a big casino. And back in the early 1990s, you'll see pictures of it if you look at all the PowerPoints that I don't show in class, but they're in the Moodle page there with this PowerPoint show. And the Mohegans, who now have a bigger casino than the Pequots, right nearby them there in Connecticut. And Mohegan is their real name. There's another tribe called the Mohicans on the Hudson River, but there's no tribe with that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was that the guy? The Mohegan, the Mohicans. He took those 2 tribes' names and combined them together and made a fictional name So there's Mohicans and Mohegans, and he made up one called the Mohicans. Last of the Mohicans. That was his story. Okay. So there's the real tribe there in Connecticut. Passamaquoddies over in what's now called the state of Maine. And the Narragansetts in Rhode Island. Just our western neighbors there. Okay, languages in the region. Real quickly again, I'm not going to get bogged down in any of this. Algonquian language, largest language group in the U.S., stretches from Blackfeet all the way over to Nova Scotia, Canada, Algonquian-speaking tribes, and then goes down the east coast a ways into northern Virginia, the Powhatan people being the furthest south of the Algonquian language-speaking tribes. The other language, I already mentioned Iroquoian, and I don't really know how to pronounce it. Hardly any words in Iroquoian. It's a real complex. All their words are really long when you write it out, and I'm not even going to try, at this late stage in my life. That's a new trick I'm not going to learn. Unless I went over to New York and was living with them, then I'd try to learn Iroquoian. Okay. So that's the overview of who and where, and there's only 2 states to memorize in this region, 2 language groups. Not real complicated here. So mobility in the region, people who live in villages. That's pretty sedentary. And you have the annual migration, like in our tribe, from about 15 to 20 miles inland over to the coast in the summer. And that's about as mobile as we used to get. Now we're all flying in airplanes. And I don't fly in airplanes much at all. Get in a little trouble in airports. So yes, go ahead.
What was the reason for the migration?
Well, seafood mostly. People like that seafood and spending the summer on the beach, on the coast, and taking the Michoun, long dugout canoes out into the ocean. That was kind of a rite of passage for young men, and some young women too would get into the Michouns. Well, I'll show you a slide. Yeah. Well, now the women do everything that the men do, but we've always had women in leadership roles and going way back. And so yeah, you'd plant your crops up around the lake where they live most of the year, and then go down the river to the coast. It's just like a 15-mile canoe journey, not too much, and spend the summer down there, and then go back and kind of rotate in shifts to check the crops up where you planted them. Sometimes plant some a little closer to the coast. Can't get too close to the ocean because of the coastal soils are not as good as further inland for growing crops. Different composition there. Okay, so let's throw a few things up here. So we were not horse people, like the people of the plains, another stereotype. Oh yeah, all the Indians everywhere, they love the horses. Well, the horses didn't even come into the plains till after about 1700, so that's fairly recent, really. And so with us, being village people who didn't travel that much, you could travel by foot or canoe or both, and get to just about everywhere you wanted to go. And those big dugouts, the Michouns, were seaworthy vessels, and people sailed all over, or rowed, and they didn't have sails, they paddled, but all over up and down the coast, visiting other tribes, but usually stayed pretty close to home. Okay, some of the subsistence. Okay. I'm a little jumpy. I had too much caffeine yesterday. Okay. Okay. This is some of the variety in our traditional diets. And there's a lot more than this, and more grown in the gardens too, besides corn, squash, and beans. You know, for one thing, you have different varieties of all three of those. Oh, plus some root crops and uh, onions and carrots and things like that. And so I showed you pictures. I think I have another picture of the Three Sisters technique. That's not my garden. I think I showed you before my own ones. Uh, and then seafood, including clams, lots of chowder, lobsters, big old lobsters. I think I'll bring in an old video and show you the clam bake. One of these Friday. I ought to do it Friday. If I got a VHS thing in there. I'll have to, yeah, I think I do down there in the equipment. Okay, and then cranberries. You know, there's a similarity here to wild rice growing up in Anishinaabe country, you know, where rice was planted into the wetlands or transplanted. Well, same with us. Lots of ponds in southeast Massachusetts, a lot of wetlands, and the cranberries are native to those lands. But we also would move plants around, plant berries, because they have the seeds in them, different wetland areas, and so they're partially assisted in cultivating, but a wild crop, you know. And you know, cranberries, you can do all kinds of good things with them. And craisins is not a new idea. They just became commercial, what, 10 years ago or something. Cranberry raisins, you know. That's ancient. You know, you take your cranberries, you lay them out on racks in the sun, and traditional people used to dry those and store them dried, and they keep longer. And yeah, we always had craisins. We didn't call them craisins. I don't even know what the Wampanoag name for cranberries is. I'm so lost sometimes because my family moved to California in 1900 and forgot everything they ever knew. But anyway, okay. So there's a little more. Let me tell you about the herring, and then I'm going to move on to the next one and show you some pictures. Because after an exam, you want to kick back, not write too many notes. And let's look at pictures for a while. Okay, yeah. So let me just tell you about the herring fish. It's a migrating ocean fish that, like salmon, it goes up rivers to spawn at a certain time of year, and then they go back out to sea. And the herring fish, what's the average size of a herring? I'd say they're about trout size, you know, a little smaller. But they were so common that people would write in their journals, the early colonists when they came over, that at that time, the spawning season, the rivers are so full of fish, you could cross the river walking on the herring's backs without getting your feet wet. Now that's got to be an exaggeration, right? But they're making a point. Maybe sometimes it got that way in the old days, and the point is that they could have almost lived on herring alone if they'd chosen to. But that's just part of the balance and the biodiversity of the world. Is some things are really abundant and some are sort of abundant, and there's plenty for everybody. Another thing that I don't think I have up here is most of the mammals that are anywhere in North America or the U.S. now used to live all the way to the East Coast. You can see in the Massachusetts Bay Colony records about mountain lions, cougars, coming into towns, and they have to hire an Indian to dispatch them, as they say in their Old English, to get them out of the town. And the bears, elk, deer of all kinds. Well, there's deer in the east, but they say the buffalo went all the way to the Appalachian mountain range, and they found, skeletons and that other stuff, fossils of what we think of as the plains bison. But they went all the way over to the east, all kinds of critters. So it is a place of all kinds of natural abundance, both in fish and wildlife and meat, and as well as the cultivated crops. Yes.
Um, did they actually hunt the whales, or did they just?
The whales. Thanks for bringing that up. Or did they just wait for them to beach themselves?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Thanks a lot. All right. No, they went out there with harpoons in a long machoon. Let me see if I have a picture of a machoon just coming up real. There is the one. Okay. So this is a short machoon, but it's got about, what, a dozen or more people in it. Well, think about one of those about 3 times as long as that with 80 Wampanoag sailors in it, and they all have harpoons, and at the end of the harpoon is a rope, and you can make rope out of all kinds of fibers. And then at the end of that is the bladder of a seal or some other large sea animal, manatees. It used to be plentiful up and down the East Coast. And the hollowed out bladder acts like a float. You can tie it to the rope, tie it to your harpoon. And they did this up in Alaska and on the West Coast as well, the whale hunting people on the West Coast. And so they get close to a whale and they all throw their harpoons at it. And of course, what does a whale do as soon as it's hit? They dive. It's their instinct. And they go and they bring rope, the animal bladder, float, and everything down below. And then because they're mammals and they have to come up for air eventually, these guys would just sit around in the machoon and wait for it to surface. And the first thing that would pop up usually would be one of the bladders, like a buoy. And they'd see that and they'd say, let's row that way. And then the whale pops up and does its thing, flying through the air, splashing, whatever, all kinds of whales, including the orcas, too, that used to be frequent on the northeast coast. But the bigger whales, the sperm whales and the blue whale, gray whales, those, they were hunted. But only once or twice a year, and some years they'd skip it, not even go for whales. You had so much other food, you didn't really need to. It was more of a cultural thing and more of a kind of a macho athletic thing where guys like to prove themselves going whale hunting. They didn't really need to go for the whales. But eventually, and to answer your question, thanks for your question there. We know your name isn't Gordon. What is your name again? Graydon. Graydon. I had the letters all mixed up. Okay. Basically the same name. Okay. Graydon. Sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back here. So eventually these whales would be on their last legs and then they would beach themselves. And that's when they could bring them in. Okay. So it wasn't just like waiting for a whale to beach itself. They had to do some work to get it to, they actually had to hunt them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, where am I? Okay, let's go back to where we were. I got lots of pictures. Okay, let's go forward again. So what's this one? Oh, this is one of mine. Okay. So you can see the squash, beans, and corn. That looks like popcorn there. Uh, yeah, they're a little smaller than our other kinds of corn. So three sisters. And you can see how the beans travel up the corn stalks and they just hang like that. The squash, with all of its shade, keeps the ground moist longer, but you have enough openings so you can walk through there, and rain and irrigation water can come in. So it's a pretty good system. Thousands of years old, still works. Okay, big baskets. I told you we're not going to go anywhere hardly without seeing big baskets. And that was one of the questions on the exam, wasn't it? Can't believe a few people picked tiny baskets for the answer. Okay. Maybe somebody could explain it to me when you have time. Come to my office and tell me why you picked tiny baskets for that answer. I thought it was a easy one. Okay, I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm just joking. I'm just being lighthearted, okay? Because I just graded all day yesterday, and when you get done with a grading ritual, you gotta loosen up a little. Okay. I wish I had a better resolution on this, but this type of pack basket where you have a strap going across your shoulder, you see variations on this going up and down the East Coast into the deep South and the Choctaw land there. They got a similar one. I'll show you when we get down there. Woven out of fibers, usually plant fibers, but you can also use animal hair to make a form of wool to make your baskets. There's a different kind of basket there with a handle. So that would be like a splint basket. You just peel strips off of the side of one tree. Again, you don't go all the way around the tree. You just take the bark off one side and then you get some splint strips. That's an old technique, splint baskets. And that's what we got there. And what we're going to see is like all kinds of, not everybody in our tribe was obviously or recognizably mixed with Africans. I didn't want to give you that impression, but we had pretty widespread variation, and also mixing with white folks too. That happened in the old colonial times too. Some of those English just preferred living with the natives than in the colonial English towns that had no separation of church and state, and they were so strict on them and all that. Yes, you had your hand up.
I did have a question.
Yes.
Was there more a Dutch influence with your people first before the colonial?
The Dutch were more into what we now call New York, so they had more of an impact on like the Mohicans and the Munsees going up the Hudson River there, and a few other tribes, the Manhattan people that Manhattan Island's named after. They kind of, their part of New York that the Dutch settled was kind of up to the western edge of the Iroquois. So they didn't go into the Iroquois. They kind of stopped there at Mohawk country and didn't want to get mixing it up with the Haudenosaunee too much, and they just stayed in what we now call the Hudson Valley, and the eastern side of New York was called New Netherlands at one time. Thanks for asking. Okay, let's keep moving here. And I showed you that one, and there's the guys building it. Is that the same one? Might be, I don't know. And I know this one's that one. It might be that one too. Okay. And a little bit of stories. Do I have time for? Yeah, I could do the short version of this. And so the spirituality, and then we'll look at more pictures on Monday. Um, so there's a lot we don't know because so much invasiveness from the colonial people and preaching Christianity to our ancestors, and there's all kinds of culture lost and everything. But what we do still have is, we know there's two names for a great spirit, Kaltantowit and Kiatan. And what we don't know, and I've asked people, but they don't know, is was one the female aspect of Great Spirit and the other the male? I kind of think so, but I can't prove that because there's been such a disconnect over the last 400 years and a lot's been lost. I wish I could have asked Nana Pashamit back when he was alive. He might have known. But anyway, then Pampagusit, guardian spirit of the ocean, very important. There's a hierarchy of the spirit beings, and Great Spirit, Kaltantawit and Kiatan is highest, but Pampagusit, because so much of our good resources came from the ocean, was considered a very high spirit that people made a lot of gifts and offerings to and prayed to and all that. Interesting that the Narragansetts, who have a different dialect of the Algonquian language, have the same name for the guardian of the ocean, Pampagusit. So, okay, and then I have this story in a real short version today of it, but or maybe I'll just get it started, who knows. So, all kinds of guardian spirits, and one of ours was a giant named Moshop. And giant spirit entities are common in the Northeast, over north of us with the Passamaquoddies and the Abnaki and Micmac peoples. They have Gluskop is their giant, and ours is Moshop. And so Moshop lived on that island that they now call Martha's Vineyard, or Island Nope is the name of it, in the Aquina, the west end of the island. And he helped people when they're seagoing and to be safe in the waters and get fish. Sometimes, hey, here's another answer to your question, guy whose name isn't Gordon. Not Grady. Oh, you just told Graydon. Does anybody ever call you Grady?
Yeah.
Do you punch them out when they say that? Okay. So here's another answer to your question: was Moshop would sometimes, occasionally, just cause a whale to be beached, and then the people would have a kind of free whale that day, and everybody jump on it, and so they would give thanks to. Come on, give me a minute. I got a minute. Okay, I'm not going to tell the whole story. I know that. Don't worry. But they would gather up all the tobacco, a certain kind that Moshop liked, and give it to him. All the tobacco on the island, and give it to him annually as a gift. And so where this story is going and who Squanit is, that's a spirit woman, Squanit, the feminine suffix and prefix there. Moshop observed how the humans were all kind of hooked up with couples and looking pretty happy, and and he was just a lonely old giant, didn't have any gal giants around or anything like that. And he said to the Great Spirit, Kiatan Kaltantawit, is there a way, is there medicine to make one of these human women into a giant? And so he could marry her. And the answer was yes, but you have to talk to her and her family and give gifts just like the humans do, and court, have courtship ritual and all that. And then if they all agree, he would be gifted with a medicine to turn her into a giant. And I think I'll have to stop right there. And the rest of the story Monday, okay? It's kind of a sad story. Don't be anticipating it or anything. It's yes. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Okay.
Did you get my stuff from the DSS?
I haven't checked my mailbox today, but I was going to go right now, and if you took it there, I'm sure it's there. Yeah, it'll be there. When did you? Oh, okay. Well, it might be there, it might
She
not,
said she would
but
take it over when I was done.
yeah, it'll be there today before the day's over. That's for sure.
When
So
you
I'll,
read my essay question, keep in mind that I was trying to get my point across. It just took me front and back.
okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's what all that extra space is for,
So
if you needed it.
you might be thinking, hell, I was campaigning for president.